Hello, I'm Andreas Blum, parish priest to the German-speaking Catholic parish of St. Boniface in London.
And I'm Barbara Höfling, singer and director of the German Choir of London. Welcome to our podcast on theology and music.
Christianity begins with the story of the Passion, with horror and grief at the violent death of a human being. But many people crossed Jesus' path of suffering, whether indifferent, reluctant, powerless, compassionate, faithful or supportive.
In words and music, we want to try to put ourselves in the place of these people and look at where they touch our own lives, these minor figures in the biblical Passion story.
His name crops up in church every Sunday. Whenever we recite the creed, we say, "Suffered under Pontius Pilate, the governor appointed by the Roman emperor, before whom Jesus is brought and who pronounces his death sentence." The creed names no apostles or saints, no one who could inspire us or set an example, whose names there might be some point in remembering. No, of all people, it has to be Pilate, the man who seals Jesus' fate on earth. His name, however, is a kind of historical anchor, which clearly pins down the story of Jesus' suffering in this world. It makes it impossible to ignore Jesus' death and remember only some timelessly beautiful words. Several Roman and Jewish sources and archaeological findings prove that Pontius Pilate was prefect of the province of Judea from 26 to 36 AD. It won't have been a dream job, for Judea was one of the most volatile provinces in the Roman Empire, and keeping the peace was one of the main tasks of the governors. But the Pontians, as his noble family and clan were known, had already shown themselves untroubled by scruples when Julius Caesar was murdered. And so Pilate was able to impose his authority in Judea and hold his own for 10 years, which at the time was quite an achievement, until he overreached himself and had to answer to the emperor in Rome. In the Bible, however, Pilate is portrayed not so much as a ruthless man of power who exercises his right to try people for treason and summarily get rid of disagreeable troublemakers with the death sentence. In the Bible, we see him more as hesitant and driven by popular anger. Whether Pilate really agonized over Jesus may well be doubted, but the questions which tradition says he raised are not only of a personal kind, but of fundamental interest. In his confrontation with Jesus, Pilate is at first chiefly annoyed. He declares the problem an internal Jewish affair and sends him off to King Herod. But Herod has no authority over religious disputes, nor is he allowed to impose the death penalty. And so Jesus ends up before Pilate again. But even after several interrogations, he cannot establish guilt in the Roman sense, and he tries to release Jesus by what he thinks is a clever move. Since a prisoner was always pardoned by the authorities at the Passover feast, he now gives the people the choice between Jesus and a robber, a certain Barabbas. But Pilate cannot shirk his responsibility so easily. The people surprise him by demanding the release of the robber. Pilate then has Jesus flogged by his soldiers, but even this is not enough for the now furious mob. Crucify him. Once Pilate is cornered like this, the mob makes short work of him. With a show of abject self-effacement, the high priests claim they have no king but the Roman emperor, and assert that Pilate will be guilty of treason if he doesn't execute this Jesus with his claim to kingship. Pilate literally washes his hands over the matter, but it is he who finally passes the death sentence and hands Jesus over to be crucified. That's not what great statesmanship looks like. When I look at Pontius Pilate today, what I first think of are state officials who are swayed by the wind of public opinion, who choose always to say and advocate what people want to hear, or who simply let themselves be intimidated and silenced by whoever shouts loudest and most aggressively on the street. Of course, it is the task of elected politicians, especially in a democracy, to represent the opinions of the people and to act accordingly. But this doesn't mean they should show no moral integrity, honesty, or adherence to principles. The Passion narrative itself shows what a nightmare naked populism is. Yesterday's Hosanna is tomorrow's crucify him. At least Pilate is credited with an inner struggle. What is truth, he asks, in a thoughtful, almost philosophical way, when Jesus tells him that he has come to bear witness to the truth. What is truth? That could be the start of an important conversation, but it has never been taken seriously. Francis Bacon spoke of jesting Pilate. What is truth? Said jesting Pilate, and would not stay for an answer. But if the question is not put in earnest, if it expresses a tired skepticism, implying that the truth doesn't exist and that it's useless to look for it because everything is only subjective anyway, then Pilate is sounding a note here that is only too familiar to modern man. People today like talking about their own truth, probably also because it gives them a sense of security, a feeling that they can't be challenged by other people who might see things differently. Of course, all our convictions are subjective. They depend on the influences we have been exposed to and are determined by our experiences, and they are never the same as those of other people. At most, they are similar or related. But that must not make my truth a bulwark against other truths. If anything, it should make me cautious, self-critical, and perhaps even curious about a truth that is greater than my own limited experience. Let us assume for a moment that Pilate had waited for Jesus' answer. The Acts of Pilate, a 5th century text, continued the dialogue in this way. Then Jesus answered him, "Truth comes from heaven." And Pilate said, "Is there no truth on earth?" Jesus said to Pilate, "You see how those who speak the truth are judged by the rulers of the earth." To this day, everyone in power, no matter where, has trouble with the truth. Far too often, calculation, tactics, and self-interest get in the way. Nevertheless, or precisely because of this, we must keep hold of the goal, not least with regard to those who are at the mercy of others, of ascribing to the truth the greatness and breadth which only heaven really knows.
Crucifixus etiam